Cast your mind back to your formative tween years. Did you maybe have a poster of your fave teen heartthrob on your wall? Did you maybe dabble in a little bit of fan fiction? Maybe you secretly thought that if you could just meet your celebrity crush, they would fall in love with you? My name is Allegra, and I've made it my mission to understand how we get sucked into fandoms. I believe that the media that we consumed as children plays a huge part in our lives. So, every other week, we revisit one huge cultural phenomena from our formative years. Come listen to Stan on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.
There are a lot of podcasts out there.
But there aren't a lot of podcasts that talk to chicken influencers.
There's a chicken for every occasion, actually.
Or that write catchy songs about particle physics.
It may seem like a hoax, but it's only quantum chromodynamics, folks.
In fact, there's only one show that does all of that, and it's our show, Part-Time Genius.
So if you love discovering new things in delightfully surprising ways, join us, Will and Mango, every week on Part-Time Genius, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, listeners. Host Grace Anna here. A quick note before the episode begins. For the simplicity of this episode, I will be referring to Sada Yacco by her birth name, Sada. When she became a geisha, many did refer to her by her geisha name, Yakko. Then when she came to the West, she was called Sadayakko. To avoid confusion, I have made the decision to continue to refer to Sada as Sada over the course of the episode. With that, let's dive in to part 2 of ArtMuse's episode on the famed geisha-turned-actress, Sada Yacco. What is art without the muse? Many of Western art's most famous works are depictions of women. But who were these women? Do they have their own stories to share with the world? Hello and welcome to ArtMuse, a podcast that aims to reshape the ways in which we interpret well-known works of art by paying dues to the women whose images have been immortalized, but whose names and stories have been wrongfully overlooked. While these women's faces are familiar to viewers around the world, their identities have been largely forgotten. Together we will explore the important lives and legacy of the female muse and appreciate these works of art from a new perspective, through the eyes of the women whose image stares back at us. Is the muse in actuality just as, if not more, important than the artists themselves? And I'm your host, Grace Anna. Welcome to part 2 of ArtMuse's 2-part episode on the Japanese geisha-turned-actress Sada Yacco. In part 1, we explored Sada's childhood, how at the age of 4 she was sent to a geisha house, where she was later adopted by the proprietress and trained to be a geisha. We then explored Sada's rise as one of the most famous geisha of Tokyo, her relationship with Prime Minister Ito, and her eventual marriage to kabuki star Otojiro Kawakami. We left things off in our story just after Sada, Kawakami, and their troupe of actors arrived in Chicago, with nothing but the clothes on their backs and dreams of a brighter future. Desperate for work and with barely enough resources to survive, the troupe was in dire straits. Unfortunately, their first few weeks in Chicago were immensely challenging. The troupe was turned away from theater after theater, many managers laughing in their faces. To make matters worse, they often received racist jabs, being called Chinamen on more than one occasion. As Sada later recalled, "When they heard we were Japanese actors, they snorted and turned their noses up and wouldn't even bother to talk to us. All the theaters did shows with casts of 300. We did Japanese plays, and on top of that, there weren't even 20 of us. They wouldn't even bend their noses to look at us. Kawakami was at his wit's end, thinking there must be somewhere that would rent us a theater. Day after day, he went out patiently. Waiting at home, we kept thinking, surely today he'll come back with good news. But he'd come back in the evening dazed. We were utterly forlorn. We were so hungry it was unbearable." But just when it seemed that they would have to cut their losses, the troupe finally caught a lucky break. One of Chicago's leading theaters, the Lyric Theater, had just hired a new and unconventional manager who was on the lookout for innovative and eccentric acts. Though the theater was already booked out, the manager offered the troupe a Sunday matinee performance as a trial. If they were successful, he would be open to giving them more slots. But as he warned the troupe, "Your performance will be the first show from the Orient that anyone here has ever seen. It might well be very interesting, but it will be completely unfamiliar. I can't guarantee that a single person will come." The troupe knew that this was a make-or-break performance, and that they would have to give their all to ensure that it was a success. Because they could not afford posters or flyers, Kawakami and Sada organized free street performances, hoping to attract curious onlookers. And that Sunday afternoon, when the theater doors opened, they were pleasantly surprised by the outcome. As author Leslie Downer described, people began to trickle in, more and more, until the theater was packed. Their advertising ploy had worked. But how were the actors to perform? They had not eaten for days. They were so weak from lack of food that they could barely stand up. Their faces were pallid and covered in cold sweat. Nevertheless, they would have to make one last effort. As the curtains opened onto the stage, Sada mustered all her remaining strength and channeled it into her performance. Though her body felt weak and wobbly, Sada would not go down without a fight. As author Leslie Downer continued, "Sweetly, pretty Sada held the audience with her large dark eyes, then tilted her head at a coquettish angle, and slowly, captivatingly, began to dance. She was wrapped in a brilliant scarlet kimono with a flower pattern. The heavy quilted hem swirled as she danced with delicate, graceful movements. Sloughing off layer after layer, she changed her costume 9 times, dancing more and more frenziedly while the drums beat insistently. And as Sada twirled with increasing vigor, the audience began to cheer. With each burst of applause, Sada was more and more energized, until she felt like she was floating in the clouds. As she later remarked, "I was so excited that I got through my dance and put my whole heart into the performance." Fortunately, much to the troupe's delight, their first performance was a massive hit. As they took their final bows, the audience erupted into loud applause. As author Leslie Downer described, "The performance had been far from perfect, but at least they had acted with passion. They had put their all into their drama. They were too exhausted and starving to care whether or not they would be invited to play again." Miraculously, at the end of their performance, there was a storm of applause. As they left the theater, the audience talked excitedly about the extraordinary realism of the performance. The actors stumbled backstage, barely able to walk. Though they weren't paid much, the troupe did make enough money that afternoon to treat themselves to a much-needed feast. Stumbling to a nearby restaurant, the troupe filled their bellies with hamburgers and fries. And the next day they awoke to good news. The manager of the Lyric Theater was so impressed with their performance that he offered them a contract for the entire upcoming season, with an allowance of $400 a week per actor. Soon, all of Chicago was rushing to see Sada and her avant-garde Japanese troupe perform on stage. In fact, the troupe did so well at the Lyric Theater that they were soon after invited to perform at the Chicago Opera. They also caught the eye of the talent manager, Alexander Comstock, who offered them representation. Just a few weeks ago, the troupe could barely afford enough food to survive. And now they were not only performing in Chicago's top venues, but had their own American manager. Because they were so popular in Chicago, their manager organized a tour for them around the Northeast. While in Boston, the troupe performed at the distinguished Tremont Theater. As in Chicago, Sada was a sensation in Boston, and she received rave reviews from the press. As one columnist declared, "Sada Yacco, how this geisha dances! Flexible as a little willow wand. the scarlet and white kimono clinging to her lithe form, and with every movement enveloping her like tongues of flame. She takes the most exquisite poses. No wonder the geisha bewitches all travelers, for this actress represents the epitome of sweetness and grace. And as another review raved, she has conquered us, and she has us groveling at her feet. She has charmed us with a personality as daintily alluring as the early spring breath of a balmy April day. She has bewitched us with a voice that speaks the unintelligible words of her tongue with a music akin to the soft rippling of leaves just stirred by the passing breeze. It didn't take long for all of Boston to clamor to the theaters for a chance to see Sada perform. Sada could barely believe just how famous she had become, and more than this, that she had taken the spotlight from her husband. In Japan, she would have never dreamed that a woman could find the success she had in America. As author Leslie Downer explained, leaving Japan had opened Sada's eyes. There, no matter how much power she really wielded in her relationship with her husband, she was eternally required to at least play act the role of the demure little woman behind her man. In this land, where women were cherished and actresses were goddesses, she had been able to step out of Kawakami's shadow. Here she could speak her mind. As Sada remarked to the press, the women of Japan are not as esteemed as they are here. They are not educated or given the opportunities which men have. All my life, I have believed that women could do many things as well as men could, but they do not have an equal chance. Oh, how I have dreamed of one day visiting the Western countries, where women can do and be something. And here I am, astonished more than I can ever tell you, at the value with which I see women regarded everywhere. At home, the woman is nothing in society. Here she is everything. I shall never forget how the American women are cherished by the men. And when I return to Japan, I hope to have at least a little influence in making my country women a more important factor in the life of the nation. From Boston, the troupe went on to Washington, D.C., where they continued to dazzle audiences. In fact, they were even introduced to President McKinley and his First Lady. From Washington, the troupe continued on to New York, where they performed at both the Lyceum Theater and the Bijou Theater on Broadway to sold-out audiences. Sada's success in New York turned her into a full-fledged celebrity, and she quickly became a household name across America. That March, she was even featured on the cover of Harper's Bazaar with the title Japan's Greatest Actress. And with her fame also came a flow of awards. Sada was invited as the guest of honor to countless benefits and galas. One of these events was thrown by the 12th Night Club, a society dedicated to women in the theater. When she accepted her award, Sada vowed to the room, "When I return to Japan, I shall endeavor to make our actresses hold the same position that they do in America." As we will see, Sada would fulfill this dream many years later, when she opened Japan's first drama school for women. But by that spring, the troupe began to set their sights on Europe, and more specifically Paris, which was hosting the 1900 exposition. Despite all odds, the troupe had managed to make a splash across America, and Sada had officially become a star. Now they were ready to try their luck across the Atlantic. But Sada's leave from America would be bittersweet. She was immensely grateful for America, which had not only embraced her as a performer, but had shown her her vast potential and value as a woman. As Sada remarked, "I owe everything to America. My American trip was my education. We learned much from it." With gratitude in her heart, Sada and the troupe boarded a steamship bound for Liverpool that April. As author Leslie Downer eloquently wrote, "Against all odds, the first Japanese troupe to visit the United States had survived. In a country where they could not speak the language, Sada and Kawakami had managed to turn a tour which had started disastrously into a triumph. They had embarked with almost no planning, very little funding, and no idea how they were going to succeed. There was no doubt that the foundation of their success was Sada, her charisma and beauty, the magic of her dancing, and the power of her acting. She was frequently billed as Japan's greatest actress. Reviewers did not realize that in fact she had never acted professionally until she reached the United States. She had arrived in San Francisco less than a year before as Kawakami's wife, strong-minded, determined, but still with no ambition other than to be the little woman behind her man. She left a star. We'll continue our story after a brief word from our advertisers.
Cast your mind back to your formative tween years. Did you maybe have a poster of your fave teen heartthrob on your wall? Did you maybe dabble in a little bit of fan fiction? Maybe you secretly thought that if you could just meet your celebrity crush, they would fall in love with you? My name is Allegra, and I've made it my mission to understand how we get sucked into fandoms. I believe that the media that we consumed as children plays a huge part in our lives. So, every other week, we revisit one huge cultural phenomena from our formative years. Come listen to Stan on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.
There are a lot of podcasts out there.
But there aren't a lot of podcasts that talk to chicken influencers.
There's a chicken for every occasion, actually.
Or that write catchy songs about particle physics.
It may seem like a hoax, but it's only quantum chromodynamics, folks.
In fact, there's only one show that does all of that, and it's our show, Part-Time Genius.
So if you love discovering new things in delightfully surprising ways, join us, Will and Mango, every week on Part-Time Genius, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back, listeners. Now let's dive back in. The troupe arrived in Liverpool 11 days later. From there, they immediately traveled south to London, where they were booked to perform at the Coronet Theatre in Notting Hill. Once again, Sada arrived in Europe at the right time. Like America, Europe was in the throes of Orientalism, with a particular interest in Japanese art, design, and fashion. So when Sada arrived in London, she immediately piqued public interest. As Leslie Downer explained, here was Sada to give sustenance to all those who had been hungry for exotic Japan. She was Japonisma embodied, all the wonder and mystery of the Orient gathered into one petite person. The troupe opened at the Coronet Theatre that May. Eager theatergoers lined up for hours to get a chance to see a real-life geisha on stage. And Sada did not disappoint. She received standing ovations and glowing reviews from the press. As the Morning Post reported, Sada Yacco is certainly one of the most enchanting ladies at present appearing on the London stage. Her dancing was quite delicious, and her acting can hardly have been other than superb. One could always follow her, and she made one feel for her, in a way that none too many of our own actresses could. The troupe became so popular that they were even invited to give a private performance for Prince Edward. But after a few successful weeks in London, the troupe decided to travel to Paris that June. Sada was elated to be in the City of Lights, a city so magical that it took her breath away. As Sada wrote in a letter, "Here I am in Paris, the fairy city. I would never have believed it's so beautiful, so vast, so imposing." By the time the troupe arrived, Paris was in the midst of hosting the Universal Exposition, a world fair organized to celebrate the start of the 20th century. One of the exposition's standout artists was the American dancer Louis Fuller. who was so popular that she had been given her own pavilion. Side note, if you have not yet listened to ArtMuse's 2-part episode on Louis Fuller, it would make a great companion piece to this episode. Because she was American, Louis had heard of Sada's success in New York and was eager to meet the Japanese troupe when they arrived in Paris. And she was so impressed with their first meeting that she invited Sada and the troupe to perform at her pavilion, an opportunity that would give the troupe exposure to Paris's elite. Louis even offered to host the troupe at her large Parisian villa after they struggled to find a hotel. Sada and the troupe opened at Louis Fuller's pavilion at the Exposition on July 4th, 1900. In the audience were some of Paris's most renowned artists, including the sculptor Auguste Rodin. The troupe's performance was an immediate sensation, and Sada in particular sent all of Paris a buzz. In fact, many theatergoers returned to the pavilion several times to see her perform. Sada received such rave reviews in the press that Louis remarked, "I turned Sadayakko loose. I never saw anything like the way those critics went wild with enthusiasm." As author Leslie Downer described, "What the critics remembered was Sada, only Sada. Paris was at her feet, spellbound. She was beautiful, she was exotic. She breathed life into the woodblock prints which they adored and collected. Everyone recognized that Sada was in a different league. She was not a geisha but an actress, on par with the greatest European stars. Some called her a genius. She may have arrived in the position of Japan's first actress and representative of Japanese theater by accident, but she filled the role brilliantly. She gripped audiences. She moved them to tears and ecstasy. All of Paris was besotted with her." Sada's performance at the Exposition was particularly admired by artists and performers. The young American dancer Isadora Duncan, who had just arrived in Paris, was mesmerized by Sada. And the avant-garde dancer Ruth St. Denis, who would later go on to become the mother of modern dance, remembered Sada's performance for years to come. As St. Denis later wrote, "Her performance haunted me for years and filled my soul with such a longing for the subtle and elusive art that it became my chief ambition as an artist." Sada also attracted a number of visual artists who clamored to capture her portrait across the mediums. In 1900, the well-known Italian caricaturist Leonetto Cappiello made a portrait of Sada that was featured in La Rire magazine. In the portrait, Sada stares at the viewer in a craze, her jet black hair jutting out in every direction. Her body, which seems to almost levitate off the ground, is twisted into an S-like shape. Her right hand is curled into a fist, while the other holds a striped hammer. Here, Sada is every bit as dramatic as her performances were on the stage. That same year, the artist Alfredo Mullar made a portrait of Sada to advertise her performance at the Universal Exposition. Here, Sada is wearing a flowing blue kimono, decorated with vibrant yellow flowers. She stands in profile, her hands catching cherry blossoms, which shower from above. Like the famed Art Deco posters of greats like Sarah Bernhardt, here Sada is dramatic, dignified, and proud. By the time the exposition came to a close, Sada had become a full-fledged celebrity throughout Paris. Her image could be found on the covers of leading magazines, such as Le Théâtre, which featured her in October of 1900. Sada was very careful with her public image, meticulously balancing her Eastern exoticism with Western ideals. As author Leslie Downer explained, Sada was well aware of the fragility of their success. With the survivor's instinct, she knew how important it was to maintain an appropriate public persona. She had to be an actress off the stage as well as on. She presented herself as a glamorous celebrity, every bit cosmopolitan, sophisticated and chic as the great Western stars. And when she wasn't on the stage or carefully crafting her public persona, Sada loved to explore Paris. She would spend hours walking in the city's different parks and boulevards. She also went to the theater any chance she could to watch legends like Sarah Bernhardt perform. Sada couldn't have been any happier. She was a sensation throughout Paris, was portrayed by the city's leading artists and on the cover of leading magazines, and had access to some of the world's best art and theater just outside her door. The troupe's performance at the exposition was so successful that Louis Fuller soon after signed them on for a European tour, to begin in the summer of 1901. But after well over a year abroad, the troupe was in desperate need of supplies that they could only get in Japan, such as makeup and costumes for their performances. And so, in 1900, the troupe left Paris and made the long journey back home. As author Leslie Downer eloquently wrote, "It had been an extraordinary adventure. Kawakami and Sada and the troupe had circled the world. They had traveled the wealthy West, and they brought with them the glamour of that great unknown world outside Japan." After a long and strenuous journey, the troupe arrived in Kobe 2 months later. As their ship docked along the pier, thousands of admirers who had heard of the troupe's success in the West gathered along the shore to welcome them home. They were particularly captivated by Sada, who deboarded the ship as a new and confident woman. As a newspaper reported, Sada Yacco is in a new dress in the latest Paris fashion. She looks just like a Western lady. She is so dramatically changed. She is by far the most radiant and exotic of the troupe. When the troupe traveled to Tokyo a few days later, hordes of fans and eager onlookers swarmed around them with curious eyes. The troupe went on to do a number of performances in the city. But because of Japan's stigma against women on the stage, Sada only appeared in one of these performances, despite the fact that she was now the troupe's leading star. As author Leslie Downer explained, apart from that one performance, Sada refused to step on stage. She was happy to perform in front of Westerners, but her own people would see that she had no training. She reverted to the role of the little woman. She ran around preparing for the next tour, organizing props and costumes. How did Sada feel to step away from the spotlight? Did it sadden her to have to shrink her success in her home country? Or did she feel safer in the shadows? Sada was at least able to catch up with friends and family during her time in Japan. She also busied herself by preparing for their upcoming tour, even gathering a group of 5 geishas to travel back west with them. After a few months in Japan, the troupe was ready to return to Europe in April of 1901. They arrived in London 2 months later, where they were greeted by Louis Fuller. They soon after traveled to Paris, where Sada was given a welcome reserved for only the biggest of celebrities. Sada was thrilled to be back in the City of Lights and jumped into her work enthusiastically. The troupe was soon after booked at the Théâtre de l'Athénée, where they performed to sold-out audiences for 60 straight nights. Sada not only received rave reviews, but became so popular that fashion stores began attaching her name to products. The store Au Mikado bought the right to use the name Yakko in their branding of different products, and the renowned perfumery Guerlain named a scent after her. And her return also caught the attention of the city's rising artists, most notably a young Pablo Picasso. Before their European tour, Louis Fuller commissioned Picasso to make a poster of Sada to use as an advertisement. To prepare, Picasso began attending Sada's performances and making sketches of her. In a surviving sketch, we find Sada in a green kimono in the midst of a dramatic act. Her body is caught in a spiral motion as she thrusts a dagger towards her own abdomen. As author Leslie Downer described, unlike the critics, Picasso did not perceive Sada as an exquisite figurine of art or a woodblock print come to life. He could sense the powerful, passionate woman behind the doll-like features. He empathized with the wild excess of her death scenes. He sketched her in motion, with multiple flailing arms like an Indian goddess. The right hand clutches a knife, which she is thrusting towards herself. Her body is all violent movement, but her face is impassive, quite beautiful in its stillness. Picasso completed his ink and gouache poster of Sada shortly after. Titled La Danseuse Sada Yacco, Picasso captures Sada in the midst of dancing. Her hands are above her head in a prayer-like position as she thrusts her head back dramatically. Her face is quiet and pensive, as if in a moment of silent prayer. Over her kimono she wears a large black drape, which envelops her entire body like a dark cloud. On the right, Picasso has scribbled fake Japanese characters, reminiscent of a woodblock print. Here Sada is all-powerful, caught in a whirlwind of dramatic action. Sada was portrayed again that same year by the English artist William Nicholson. In Nicholson's color lithograph, Sada is garbed in full traditional Japanese attire, including wooden clogs. She stands politely, with her hands folded at her waist, as she looks stoically off to the side. Set in front of a curtain, it feels as if Sada is about to step forward to begin her performance, as we wait with bated breath. It was also around this time that the Spanish artist Ramon Casas made a portrait of Sada. Unlike her other portraits which exoticize her, here Sada wears a Western-style outfit, with a long black coat and fashionable top hat, turning her into a modern Parisian woman. She sits in a dignified manner as she stares ahead proudly. Here Sada exudes confidence, elegance, and refinement. The troupe's European tour began that November, with their first stop in Berlin. From here, the troupe went on to other German cities, such as Hanover, Zurich, and Munich. In every city Sada traveled to, she was met with roaring crowds and rave reviews. Even King Otto of Bavaria rushed for a chance to see her on stage. By that February, the troupe traveled to Vienna, where they were greeted by the artist Gustav Klimt, who was so impressed with Sada that he invited her to give a private performance for his intimate artistic circle. From Vienna, the troupe continued on to Prague, Budapest, and later to Russia, where they were invited to perform for Tsar Nicholas II at the Winter Palace. Sada was mesmerized by Russia's snow-topped buildings and horse-drawn sleighs. As author Leslie Downer described, Russia was an unforgettably romantic place for Sada. The gallant young Russian men treated her like a goddess. On the streets, they cast their coats on the ground, where she was to tread, as a gesture of welcome, so that they could treasure the imprint of her little foot. When she left a banqueting hall or stepped out of a carriage, she would be amazed to find the floor black with overcoats. Even the snow-white marble floor of the hotel was pitch black, covered in overcoats when she walked in. From Russia, the troupe headed south to Italy, where they performed in Rome, Naples, Florence, and Milan. In fact, in Milan, Sada was introduced to the famed composer Giacomo Puccini, who was in the midst of writing his opera, Madame Butterfly. Puccini had gone to see Sada perform on several occasions during her time in Milan, and there is no doubt that she inspired the character of Madame Butterfly. As author Leslie Downer explained, Sada's stage performance enabled Puccini to give life to the bare bones of his plot. She provided him with a model for a flesh and blood Japanese woman to give reality to his imagined Madame Butterfly. And when Sada was in Venice, she was introduced to the young painter Paul Klee, who was so inspired by Sada that he later wrote, "Everything about her is as lovely as the way she chatters. Nothing is left to chance. Not the least little fold in her dress. The way she weeps indicates the high quality of her taste. The way she goes to bed, sheer enchantment. A sprite or a woman. In any case, a real sprite." The tour finally came to an end that July. Over the course of the 9-month tour, Sada had dazzled audiences across the continent. She had caught the attention of kings and queens, famed composers and rising artists, and was now a household name throughout Europe. As author Leslie Downer exclaimed, "The tour had been a triumph. The reviews had been overwhelmingly positive. They had performed in a staggering 71 cities, performing 7 days a week with no break at all. It was an epic tour for a major troupe, quite possibly unprecedented to this day. But in the afterglow of the tour, the troupe knew they would inevitably have to return to Japan. They were once again exhausted of resources and in need of rest and recuperation. But more than this, their success in Europe had inspired them to push the boundaries of possibility in their home country. They would introduce Western theater to Japan, a completely novel idea. And they would fight to have Sada, who had achieved international acclaim, finally recognized at home as the superstar she had become. In the words of author Leslie Downer, "No doubt, like many successful women, Sada did not realize her own brilliance and doubted that she deserved her renown. She knew that Westerners rated her as highly as the greatest of their own stars, but she had a shrewd suspicion that her novelty and exoticism had contributed mightily to her fame. For her, it was not a real success. She had yet to prove herself in her own country among her peers." We'll continue our story after a brief word from our advertisers.
Cast your mind back to your formative tween years. Did you maybe have a poster of your fave teen heartthrob on your wall? Did you maybe dabble in a little bit of fan fiction? Maybe you secretly thought that if you could just meet your celebrity crush, they would fall in love with you? My name is Allegra, and I've made it my mission to understand how we get sucked into fandoms. I believe that the media that we consumed as children plays a huge part in our lives. So, every other week, we revisit one huge cultural phenomena from our formative years. Come listen to Stan on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.
There are a lot of podcasts out there.
But there aren't a lot of podcasts that talk to chicken influencers.
There's a chicken for every occasion, actually.
Or that write catchy songs about particle physics.
It may seem like a hoax, but it's only quantum chromodynamics, folks.
In fact, there's only one show that does all of that, and it's our show, Part-Time Genius.
So if you love discovering new things in delightfully surprising ways, join us, Will and Mango, every week on Part-Time Genius, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back, listeners. Now let's dive back in. The troupe set sail for Japan in July of 1902. How did Sada feel to be returning home? Was she ready to push the boundaries of possibility for women? Or was she worried she would be forced back into the shadows? As author Leslie Downer eloquently wrote, "The epic journey was over. It was time to come back to Earth." For all her brave words, Sada must have wondered what fate had in store for her in Japan. There she was not a diva, a superstar, or the idol of the theater-going public, but an ex-geisha, spurned by decent society. It was all very well performing simplified kabuki for foreigners who had no idea of the real thing. But in Japan, where actors were initiated as children into the arcane secrets of an exclusive and closed profession, she could not go on stage. Moreover, in Japan, it would never do for a woman to be more famous than her husband. With churning waters surrounding them, Sada knew the road ahead would not be easy, but she was ready to fight for herself. The troupe arrived in Kobe that August, and after a few months of recuperation, they set their plan to introduce Western theater to Japan into action. They would start with the great Shakespeare and chose Othello for their first play. But though Sada had been confident in Europe, she began to have second thoughts about performing in Japan. It was still taboo for a woman to be on stage, let alone an ex-geisha. And it was even less heard of for a woman to be the star. She became terrified of the backlash she might suffer should she steal the spotlight from her husband. But eventually, after much encouragement from Kawakami and the troupe, Sada agreed to perform. As author Leslie Downer explained, having made her decision, for several weeks she went down to the beach every day, and stood facing the ocean, declaiming her lines over the roar of the waves. Being untrained as an actress, she had never learned to project her voice. When they performed in the West, speech had been unimportant. The troupe opened Othello at the Meiji-za Theater in Tokyo in February of 1903. How did Sada feel as she stepped onto the stage? Was she filled with nerves and anticipation? Or did she harness her inner strength and walk out to meet the crowd with confidence? Fortunately, the audience embraced Sada, and by the performance's end, she was met with roaring applause. Though reviews of Othello were mixed, almost all unanimously agreed that Sada had stolen the show. As one critic remarked, Sada had a mesmerizing stage presence and a beauty so vibrant that even in the huge theater, it never diminished. She had a fascinating soft smile and a natural allure, but she also had a sweet vulnerability. She had the frail, yielding beauty of a willow tree. That's her secret, and no one else can compete. The troupe went on to perform to sold-out audiences every night of the week, and eventually toured the entire country, performing in Osaka, Kobe, and Kyoto. In each of these cities, Sada was met with cheering crowds and was finally celebrated as the great actress she had become. As author Leslie Downer declared, "For Sada, this was the real beginning of her acting career. Whenever she was interviewed, she always said she had begun acting in 1903, when she was nearly 32. Her fame in the West didn't count. But acting was in her bones. Once she had trodden the boards in Japan, she couldn't stop." After the success of Othello, the troupe continued to perform various Shakespeare plays. When they put on a production of Hamlet, Sada dazzled audiences as Ophelia. As the writer Yukaku Akita wrote, "I was sick with love for her, Sadayakko's Ophelia. When she came out singing in her jewel-like voice, everyone in the audience held their breath, utterly spellbound by this woman on stage. And when she laughed her high-pitched laugh, the uncanny beauty sent a shiver down everyone's spine." Sada, Kawakami, and their troupe continued to perform throughout Japan for the next few years. But by 1906, Kawakami's health took a turn for the worse, and he was forced to retire from the stage. Now in the sidelines, Kawakami began to have dreams of opening Japan's first Western-style theater, where Sada could be the star. It was an ambitious plan, and one that would require more than a surface-level knowledge of Western theater. And so, in the summer of 1907, Sada and Kawakami decided to travel back to Paris to more formally study Western theater tradition, including acting techniques, stage design, and theater management. Sada was ecstatic to be back in the City of Lights. As author Leslie Downer eloquently wrote, "For Sada, it must have been thrillingly nostalgic to find herself back, after nearly 6 years, in the city which she adored, and where she had found such adulation and success." On their previous European tours, they had spent all their time surviving, performing every day without a break. This time, they were determined to devote themselves to learning and gathering information. Initiated into the secrets of Western dramatic arts, they would be in the perfect position to create a new theater for the new Japan. It didn't take long for news to spread that the iconic Sada Yacco had returned to Paris. The public welcomed Sada back with open arms and began eagerly awaiting a homecoming performance. But much to the public's disappointment, Sada made it clear that she was in Paris as a student and not a performer. As Sada explained to the press, "I've come to Paris not to show myself or to act, but to study in order to perfect myself in the dramatic art." Instead, she enrolled herself in classes at the prestigious Paris Conservatoire, where she formally studied different Western acting techniques. To keep the public at bay, Sada did agree to a few performances. In January of 1908, she performed at the Japanese legation, as well as the Théâtre Regine. After a few months abroad, Sada and Kawakami headed back to Japan in May of 1908, ready to fulfill their dream of opening a Western-style theater. But Sada had another dream to pursue first. she wanted to open Japan's first acting school for women. Because Japan had banned women from the stage for centuries up until recently, there had been very few resources for young aspiring actresses. In fact, it was still relatively taboo for a woman to even pursue a career on the stage. Opening a female acting school was a revolutionary idea, and Sada's own way to break down the societal obstacles and prejudices that she came up against early in her own career. By founding her own school, Sada sought to open new avenues of opportunity for the next generation of Japanese women. As Sada explained, having seen how actresses in Paris are highly educated and well-read, and how society welcomes them and heartily supports their development, I would like to train accomplished actresses who might come to be called the Sarah Bernhardts of Japan. Sada officially opened her school, which she named the Imperial Actress Training Institute, on September 15, 1908 in Osaka. Sada received hundreds of applications from girls all over Japan. After an extensive process, she eventually selected 15 standout students. Her students, who ranged in age from 16 to 25, were trained in both Japanese and Western theater technique, given lessons in dance and music, and were even taught the art of script writing. The course was extensive and lasted 2 full years. Sada did not charge any tuition fee, but her students did need to be available to participate in performances without pay. If a student did not complete their 2 years of training, they would be charged tuition for the time they spent at the school. Several of Sada's students went on to become established actresses in Japan. Quite remarkably, one of her first students, Risco Mori, eventually became one of Japan's most celebrated actresses of her generation. After her school was established, Sada joined forces with Kawakami to work on opening their Western-style theater, which would be known as the Imperial Theater. It was an ambitious project and required an immense amount of financial backing. And, in an interesting twist of fate, one of the theater's main investors was Sada's long-lost love, Momosuke Fukuzawa. Momosuke had married the daughter of one of Japan's most prominent businessmen and had since inherited his business. He was now one of the wealthiest men in the entire country. It had been over 20 years since a young and heartbroken Sada had said goodbye to Momosuke, and now he was suddenly back in her life. How did Sada feel to be reunited with her long-lost love? The man who had once captured her heart and made her whole body flutter with excitement. Did she feel that it was destiny bringing them back together? Though their relationship remained businesslike for now, this would not be the last time that Sada and Momosuke would reunite, and their love story was far from over. We'll continue our story after a brief word from our advertisers.
There are a lot of podcasts out there.
But there aren't a lot of podcasts that talk to chicken influencers.
There's a chicken for every occasion, actually.
Or that write catchy songs about particle physics.
It may seem like a hoax, but it's only quantum chromodynamics, folks.
In fact, there's only one show that does all of that, and it's our show, Part-Time Genius.
So if you love discovering new things in delightfully surprising ways, join us, Will and Mango, every week on Part-Time Genius, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Cast your mind back to your formative tween years. Did you maybe have a poster of your fave teen heartthrob on your wall? Did you maybe dabble in a little bit of fan fiction? Maybe you secretly thought that if you could just meet your celebrity crush, they would fall in love with you? My name is Allegra, and I've made it my mission to understand how we get sucked into fandoms. I believe that the media that we consumed as children plays a huge part in our lives. So, every other week, we revisit one huge cultural phenomena from our formative years. Come listen to Stan on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back, listeners. Now let's dive back in. After many years of hard work and planning, Sada and Kawakami's dream was finally realized, and the Imperial Theater officially opened to the public in February of 1910. For their opening week, Sada put on a series of dance performances, dancing to both Japanese and Western music alongside her students. Each night, eager theatergoers lined the streets for a chance to see Japan's first Western-style theater, and their performances quickly sold out. Over the course of the following season, the troupe put on a number of different productions, with Sada always playing the lead. Their first season was immensely successful, and Sada in particular received rave reviews from the press. But unfortunately, Sada and Kawakami would not be able to enjoy their theater's success for long. By October of 1911, Kawakami's health began to rapidly decline. His complexion turned gray, and his lower stomach began to swell. He was shortly after diagnosed with abdominal dropsy. As his pain and discomfort increased, Kawakami began to fear that his end might be near. Preparing for his death, he urged Sada to keep their dream alive. As he pleaded with her, "The Imperial Theater has been born as an example of theaters to come, but we still need to train actors capable of performing on its stage. This has been my ideal. If I die, carry on my work." Sada barely left Kawakami's side, only leaving for a few hours each day to sleep or perform at the theater. As author Leslie Downer described, "All night long, Sada was kneeling silently beside his futon, tending to his every need, gently pressing cups of lukewarm green tea to his dry lips. She became pale and haggard. At dawn, a relative or one of the actors would take her place for a few hours so that she could sleep. In the evening, she was still performing. She was so exhausted that she had begun to forget her lines." Hitting a near breaking point, Sada eventually decided to cancel all future performances so that she could dedicate herself fully to Kawakami's care. By that November, it was clear that Kawakami's end was near. When he slipped into a coma, doctors told Sada to prepare herself to say goodbye. Knowing that she had little time left, Sada decided to carry Kawakami to the Imperial Theater so that he could spend his final hours in the place he had worked so hard to build. Later that afternoon, on November 11, 1911, surrounded by Sada and their devoted troupe, Kawakami took his final breaths. As author Leslie Downer continued, "At 6 a.m., he moved his right hand a little. Sada put her mouth close to his ear and asked him if he wanted anything. He smiled slightly and moved his hand 3 times. Then he opened his eyes and looked straight at Sada. With that, he breathed his last." In the moments after Kawakami's death, Sada knelt numbly at his side. At first, Sada could do nothing but weep. 20 years had passed since she first met Kawakami. Since then, they had done everything together. Kawakami's funeral took place a week later. After the service, Sada stayed with Kawakami's family to grieve and recover. She remained in bed for weeks, overcome with sadness, often sobbing herself to sleep. She also had her future to consider. Now a widow, she would almost certainly be expected to leave her career on the stage behind. In fact, many widows in Japan resigned from society altogether and became nuns. As author Leslie Downer explained, "As a geisha and then an actress, Sada was used to being an outsider. She had won her place in society, not through birth or marriage, but through her own beauty, talents, and fame. But it was a precarious position. If she were to continue acting, she might well find powerful forces raged against her. Popularity and fame were not enough to allow her to go against the accepted conventions of society." But Sada refused to cower in the face of societal scorn. She had made a promise to Kawakami on his deathbed that she would continue their legacy, and she would stay true to her word. As Sada later shared, Once my husband left this world, I should probably have stopped being an actress. But my karma had not yet run its course. It was obviously my responsibility to fulfill my husband's dying wishes. And for myself, from my own feelings, I decided I must do my work as best I could, as if my husband was going to come back again soon. Once I decided that, all my pain disappeared, and I started feeling better. And so, on February 8th, 1912, nearly a month after Kawakami's tragic death, Sada returned to the Imperial Theater. Over the next many weeks, Sada and the troupe performed to sold-out audiences each night. And after a successful season at the theater, they went on to tour across the country, stopping in major cities like Kyoto and Nagoya. Everywhere Sada went, she was met with cheering crowds, and though he was no longer by her side physically, Sada felt Kawakami's spirit with her whenever she was on stage. It was also around this time that Sada rekindled her romantic relationship with her first great love, Momosuke. We are not sure exactly how their relationship reignited, but around 6 months after Kawakami's death, it was clear that Sada and Momosuke were romantically involved. Over 2 decades had passed since they had been ripped apart in their youth, and now they were finally back together. As Leslie Downer explained, in the terrible months following Kawakami's death, Sada was desperately in need of support and love. Neither had ever forgotten the intensity of their first meeting as adolescents. Their friendship as adults was touched by the magic of that innocent love. It had never soured. They had been wrenched apart in spite of themselves. They probably met at a tea house. That was where every sort of meeting requiring discretion took place. There they exchanged memories of the old days, of the sadness of their parting, and the long years that had passed between. It didn't take long for the press to catch word of Sada and Momosuke's relationship, and soon articles of their romance spread like wildfire. As one reporter wrote, the two of them were like newlyweds playing house together, still in a dream of love. But not everyone was in support of their relationship. Because Sada had only recently become a widow, and Momosuke was still married, their relationship stirred quite the scandal. And unfortunately, it was Sada, as the woman, who took the brunt of the public's criticism. She began to be painted as vulgar and promiscuous by both the public and the press. Eventually, tension became so high that Sada had to cancel the remainder of her tour around the country. But Sada had to say goodbye to Momosuke once before, and she refused to sacrifice their love because of society's expectations of her again. Though her reputation and career suffered for it, Sada defiantly decided to follow her own heart and pour herself into her new relationship. Fortunately, the public's outcry quieted over time, and Sada was able to continue her career on the stage. In 1913, she put on a production of Tosca, which was the first ever performance of Tosca in Japan. And the following year, she performed Salome. But as Sada approached her mid-40s, she began to receive cruel criticism about her aging appearance. As one scathing review read, "She can't hide her age, which appears on the surface of her skin." And another chided, "She's over 40, it's painful to see her acting. She should retire while she's still popular." Another chimed in, "However much her fame precedes her, even though Sadayakko is in good shape, she's getting old. I admire the fact that she is not discouraged by the winds of this fickle world, now blowing cold towards her. She has a great spirit. She even outdoes her husband, and she certainly contributed a lot to the world of theater. All the same, it's probably a good idea for her to pull out of the acting business. The theater world certainly has a desperate shortage of women, but what it needs is young, lovely women." Though Sada was not one to falter in the face of criticism, she did begin to wonder if her time on the stage had come to an end. Preferring to leave with dignity, Sada announced her retirement in 1917, at the age of 46. For her final performance, Sada performed scenes from Verdi's Aida. At the end of the performance, she also recited an original poem that she had written for the occasion. as the poem reads, "In the end, the wild chrysanthemum has to bloom in the shade." How did Sada feel as she took her final bow? Was she ready to say goodbye to the stage? Would she miss the spotlight? Or was she looking forward to a quieter life? Sada's retirement from the stage made international news, with newspapers throughout Europe and the United States paying tribute to her long and impressive acting career. Once in retirement, Sada settled into her new life with Momosuke. As author Leslie Downer described, Momosuke was the most loving and supportive of partners. Their partnership was an inspiration for both of them. Both of them seemed to have become young again. They were rejuvenated by their relationship. As a token of his love, Momosuke bought Sada a lavish estate in Nagoya, which included a ballroom, billiards room, tea room, and dining room. There was even an electric generator in the attic, a rare luxury at the time. In 1918, Sada also founded her own textile company called the Kawakami Silk Company. Sada always adored fashion, and now she could showcase her talents as a designer. Sada also revolutionized the workforce with her unique treatment of her employees. Most women at the time employed in the fashion industry were treated like indentured servants. Instead, Sada offered her workers dormitories to live in, capped their workdays off at 8 hours, and gave them a break after every hour of work. And in the evenings, Sada even taught her employees how to host traditional tea ceremonies and make flower arrangements. It was also around this time that Sada decided to adopt a son. Because she had never had children of her own, Sada wanted to ensure that she had an heir to inherit her and Kawakami's fortune. She also wanted to be sure that there was someone to take care of her as she got older. And so in 1918, Sada adopted a 19-year-old orphaned relative of Momosuke's named Hirozo. And 2 years later, she adopted a 13-year-old girl named Tomiki. Sada became particularly fond of Tomiki and took her under her wing. She taught Tomiki the piano, traditional Japanese dance, and the art of hosting tea parties. When Sada founded the Kawakami's Children's Music and Drama School in 1924 for her youngest students, she made sure to enroll Tomiki so that she could be properly trained as a performer. But Sada was not the only person who Tomiki bonded with. As it turned out, Tomiki and Hirozo became very close, over time growing romantic feelings for one another. And though they were adopted siblings and technically second cousins, the two ended up marrying in 1924. Sada and Momosuke's relationship continued to flourish into old age. But unfortunately, in 1927, Momosuke suffered a significant stroke and became bedridden. Sada rushed to his aid, even closing her acting school as well as her silk company to be able to take care of him. But as Momosuke's death became more and more imminent, he made the hard decision to return to his wife at his family home for his final years, as was customary in Japanese culture. This was the second time that Sada and Momosuke would be ripped apart by societal expectations. As author Leslie Downer explained, they parted very formally. Their feelings lay too deep for words or tears. They both knew all too well it was the last time they would ever see each other. As a geisha, Sada knew that to serve her man best, it was her duty to preserve his marriage. Along the way, she may have hoped and prayed it could be otherwise. But in the end, she knew she would be called upon to sacrifice her own happiness. Marriage, the socially recognized bond between families, was the rock on which society stood. They took the traditional Japanese path. They put their duty to society before their personal feelings. They suffered as a result, but they had done the right thing. Momosuke passed away a few years later in February of 1938. How did Sada feel when she heard the news that the man who had captured her heart from her youth was now gone? Was she heartbroken that she could not be by his side to say goodbye? Or had she already been grieving him since he left her for his family? After Momosuke's death, Sada lived a relatively quiet life. She sold her larger properties and moved into a smaller house near the Kiso River. When Japan entered World War II in 1941, Sada tragically bore witness to the destruction of her country. In fact, her apartment in Tokyo was burned down in firebombings. By the time the war came to an end in August of 1945, Sada was alive to hear the unimaginable news that Nagasaki and Hiroshima had been demolished by atomic bombs. As author Leslie Downer eloquently wrote, Sada had seen Japan rise to unimaginable glory. She had seen the great opening up to the West, the discovery of new worlds and new ways of life. She had played a large part herself in transforming Japan and its image abroad. Perhaps she was sorry she had lived to see it all turn sour. Within just a few months of the war's end, Sada was diagnosed with liver cancer. As her cancer progressed, it spread to both her throat and tongue, eventually making it impossible for her to speak, eat, or drink. She passed away shortly afterwards on December 7, 1946, at the age of 75. What did Sada think about as she took her final breaths? Was she proud of all her accomplishments? Did she reflect fondly on all of her adventures? Was she hoping to see Kawakami and Momosuke on the other side? Tragically, Sada's legacy was almost immediately forgotten after her death. As author Leslie Downer explained, in those grim days of post-war reconstruction, there were far more pressing things to think about than the death of an actress who had been famous decades before. Her demise received no more than a couple of lines in a corner of a newspaper. Sada remained in relative obscurity until the 1980s, when both she and Kawakami began to once again spark public interest. In 1985, the Japanese National Broadcasting Channel, NHK, released a 52-episode series based on Sada's life titled Waves of Spring. There is now a museum in Sada's home in Nagoya, dedicated to Sada, called the Cultural Path Futaba Museum, which displays photographs and posters of Sada, some of the many medals she was awarded in her life, and articles of her clothing. And in 2003, author Leslie Downer published the first English biography on Sada titled Madame Sadayakko, the geisha who seduced the West. But even with these admirable efforts, Sada is unfortunately still greatly overlooked and underappreciated as an important figure of history. And when she is remembered, she is often victim to the misogyny she fought so hard against in her lifetime. As author Leslie Downer explained, most histories of Japanese drama subsume Sada's achievements beneath Kawakami's. As the man, he is credited with the development of New Wave theater, while she is portrayed as the obedient wife. Some books even state that it was Kawakami who founded the school for actresses and installed Sada as principal. The pernicious myth that Sada was untrained and untalented persists. But her contemporaries who actually saw her perform judged her very differently. Everyone recognized the originality and passion of her acting. They applauded her ability to grip her audience and take them on an imaginary journey into another world. And so in today's episode, we aim to honor Sada as the remarkable woman she was. From her days as a famous geisha who caught the attention of Japan's most powerful men, to her breakout as a performer in America and later Europe, where she became a superstar, to her fight to open new avenues of opportunity for women in Japan, and finally, to her decision to follow her heart and love the man she desired despite societal scorn, Sada chose to live her life both fiercely and freely, and was unafraid to dance to the beat of her own drum. Sada's first taste of fame came when she was only 15 years old, as she rose the ranks of the geisha world and became one of the most sought-after geisha in modern history. Her lovers and patrons were some of Japan's most influential men, including the Prime Minister himself. But Sada was not destined to be a geisha for long, though she could have continued her impressive career for many years to come. She chose to sacrifice it all to marry the man she loved, a kooky kabuki actor with dreams as outlandish as his avant-garde performances. When Sada followed Kawakami to America, she did so under the pretext of supporting her husband, and had no idea that she would soon be stealing his spotlight. Fate was certainly on Sada's side. She arrived in the West at the perfect time, when interest in Japanese culture, particularly Japanese women, was at an all-time high. And though she was shocked to suddenly find herself being advertised as the troupe's main attraction, she rose to the occasion and took center stage. But it wasn't all luck and fate that transformed her into a superstar. Despite having no formal training, Sada proved to be a naturally talented performer, whose realistic performances sent chills down audiences' spines. As author Leslie Downer eloquently wrote, "When Sada was interviewed, she was down-to-earth and humorous, but on stage she was transformed. She expressed her passion through her acting. She became the geisha, burning for revenge. She acted from the bottom of her heart." After taking America by storm, Sada went on to become a sensation throughout Europe, eventually becoming Japan's first international female celebrity. She was particularly admired by artists, who flocked to see her ethereal performances. She was captured on paper by Pablo Picasso, Leonetto Cappiello, and Ramon Casas, and turned into a poster by Alfredo Muller. And she even inspired Giacomo Puccini's famed character, Madame Butterfly. Fashion houses attached her name to their latest designs, and perfumeries named scents after her. Though Sada spent less than 3 years in total performing in the West, she left a lasting impact on nearly every facet of their society, from the theater and dance world to the art world and to the fashion world. And Sada's superstardom was not a happy accident. She was smart enough to notice the West's obsession over Eastern culture and manipulate it to her advantage. As Leslie Downer wrote, Sada was adept at manipulating her own story. She knew the power of spin. In the West, no one knew who or what she was. She could recreate herself and project any image she liked. Released from the societal pressures of her own society, she enjoyed a brief taste of freedom. She no longer had to fit in. She told and retold her story, changing it as she saw fit. She created her own myth. And Sada continued to capitalize on her exoticism upon her return to Japan. While in the West, she was exotic because she was Japanese, in Japan, she became exotic as she turned more and more westernized. Becoming a bridge between the two cultures, Sada was able to remain just mysterious enough to capture the imagination of both the East and West. Upon their return, Sada and Kawakami opened Japan's very first Western-style theater, introducing Japanese audiences to Western playwrights like Shakespeare. And though it was still relatively taboo for women to perform on the stage in Japan, Sada boldly starred in all of their productions, moving the needle for women in the theater world. And Sada's groundbreaking efforts did not stop there. Wanting to create more pathways for aspiring actresses, Sada opened the country's first theater school for women, providing women with the unique opportunity to formally train as actresses. In fact, many of her students became the next generation of famous actresses in Japan. And when Sada opened her own textile company in her retirement, she not only treated her female staff humanely, but trained them in other life skills on their off time. But more than anything else, Sada was a spirited woman who lived passionately, loved freely, and fought for what she believed in. We end today's episode with a gorgeous quote from author Leslie Downer. Sada was not only beautiful, but feisty and full of life. At a time when the ideal for a Japanese woman was to fulfill the roles of a good wife and wise mother, Sadayakko took her life into her own hands. From humble beginnings, she rose to become the most famous woman in Japan. She carved out her destiny by herself. With nothing but her natural beauty and talents, she created a glittering career, opening the door for generations of Japanese women. The way she ran her life made her one of Japan's first modern women, geisha, actress, mistress, Sada Yacco's was a life lived passionately. She managed to follow her heart. Few Japanese women, before or after, have created such ripples in the East and West. I hope you have enjoyed part 2 of ArtMuse's 2-part episode on Sada Yacco. I have included images, resources, and suggestions for further reading on the ArtMuse website and Instagram. ArtMuse is produced by Kula Production Company. Today's episode was written by me, your host, Grace Anna. Stay tuned as I continue to share the stories of the women behind some of the world's most important works of art. Until next time, bye for now.
There are a lot of podcasts out there.
But there aren't a lot of podcasts that talk to chicken influencers.
There's a chicken for every occasion, actually.
Or that write catchy songs about particle physics.
It may seem like a hoax, but it's only quantum chromodynamics, folks.
In fact, there's only one show that does all of that, and it's our show, Part-Time Genius.
So if you love discovering new things in delightfully surprising ways, join us, Will and Mango, every week on Part-Time Genius, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Cast your mind back to your formative tween years. Did you maybe have a poster of your fave teen heartthrob on your wall? Did you maybe dabble in a little bit of fan fiction? Maybe you secretly thought that if you could just meet your celebrity crush, they would fall in love with you? My name is Allegra, and I've made it my mission to understand how we get sucked into fandoms. I believe that the media that we consumed as children plays a huge part in our lives. So, every other week, we revisit one huge cultural phenomena from our formative years. Come listen to Stan on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.